We're live.
Are we?
Well, it says we're live. I hope we're live.
No, I don't know.
I don't know. We're doing our best here. Can people see us? That's what matters.
No, there were commenters, but there's nobody in here. So
It's Mind Your Banners Postgame.
13.
He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. That was something.
I mean, we kind of joking. I said, this was going to start to look like that Michigan State game. And he said, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't think they're going to get beat that bad. It actually
That is not what I said. I said slow down.
But now, in fairness, we might have both been wrong because it looked like more like the Purdue game. I mean, it's not a joke. I mean, the fourth quarter, the second team, they emptied the bench in the at the start.
And Kobe Martin ran for 100 yards.
And Kobe Martin ran for 100 yards in the fourth quarter.
Touchdowns.
I mean, I had it winning by more than you. And
yeah,
we had talked about the week that I thought Signetti's confidence kind of that he displayed throughout the week kind of told me that they felt they were going to hang one on them and beat them handily. But I don't think, even in your rosiest of pictures, the 63-10 final score would be on your scoreboard. I mean,
it's that there was a stat floating around that you and I both kind of rolled our eyes at that this is the most points a Big Ten team scored against an AP top 10 team in history, and I thought about that until I saw our friend Adam Rittenberg from ESPN contextualize it. Ohio State had scored 62 twice. Like Indiana now owns that record.
But now, see, what's funny is
not Ohio State, not Michigan. Sure. Like that Indiana owns a record like that.
Well, and I think their biggest win, they only had one other win over a top 10 opponent that was more than one possession. That was that Ohio State game. They only have 7 total now. And only one, and this is obviously.
Do you think Brett Bielema calls this the darkest day?
But can you see it being like now? They've won 2 big, so now it's like, well, this team really wasn't. Illinois wasn't on that. Like that they might have already toned it down a little bit. So that no, but I mean, I joke because we what the narrative has been about this team, and Curt Cignetti really wanted to talk about it, but he caught himself and was very careful with kind of how he framed things, kind of didn't take the bait. But the narrative has been for 9 months that this team didn't beat anybody, didn't have a signature win. Their success is their schedule, and that's even carried over into this year because obviously the non-conference schedule was what it was. But you could see tomorrow the narrative, them finding ways to change it. But I think they did enough in this game to sort of say, like, look, play that game, we'll beat the next person. This was so lopsided that you can't pick it apart.
And Illinois won 10 games last year. Like, there's a reason why they're a top 10 team. And I'm not sure. I'm not convinced. Certainly with their offensive line play, that they're a top 10 team. But it wasn't outlandish to have them there. It wasn't like last year. Who was it that beat? Was it Georgia Tech beat Florida State in Dublin last year? And it was like, whoa,
they're bad.
Look at this. Look at this really impressive week 0 win for Georgia Tech. And then it turned out Florida State was just terrible. But there are reasons to believe Illinois is a good team, at least a good team, a bowl team.
Well, it was a good team.
Yeah. Look, I'll say anecdotally, and in the cold light of day, we'll see what it looks like in the polls and things like that. I saw people, pundits, sports writers,
take note,
national talking heads in college football, even people who I think are on record as not particularly caring for Curt Cignetti's personality or his sort of brand of
bravado.
Yes. Looking at this game and just saying, oh, wow. This is just, that is a damn good football team just laying one on an Illinois team that was just not ready to be defeated.
I think the couple things stand out to me. I mean, we can get to the game itself, which won't take very long because it was 63-10. So
Indiana outgained Illinois by 418 total yards.
I mean, just a massacre. But the Signetti walked off the field with a smile, which rarely happens. Mm-hmm. And then he was talking to, I think, one of his director of ops or one of his behind-the-scene people, and he did this. I think he was summing up the game. But the idea that he had a moment of levity and being happy. I mean, he doesn't let that moment hit him very often. And then the opposite view of the sidelines, like some of the images of Brett Bielema during the game, after the game.
I mean, he said, I think the quote that I saw circulate because we were in Signetti's press conference was basically just, I've never been a part of something like that.
Like he was,
and he has, but on the winning side.
But he looked like he was going to throw up at one point. He was so disgusted. I mean, and there was a video. I don't know if you saw the video of him freaking out on the sidelines, like
No.
losing his mind. Like, I mean, those are the images that stick with you because they're outliers, right? You don't see necessarily coaches that get demonstrative in a loss. Like, that shows you, Signetti talked about breaking their will. And that wasn't,
He used that quote like 4 times. Like,
but I mean, yeah.
that was that was clearly the, like, if you could have asked him to just sort of like,
How do you feel about this game?
Yes,
Like,
like-
forward. Right.
what is
Like, that's it.
the
That's
title of the book
We
that you're going to
broke
write
the
about
yeah.
this game? Broke the
And-
story of Indiana, Illinois.
But I think that's what sort of stands out. I mean, like, we can get into the numbers and how this all unfolded, but like when you're talking about what's the defining image of the game, what stands out, what I'm going to remember about it, it's those moments. Because, like I said, like, I mean, even as IU rolled to 10-0 last year, Signetti rarely sort of enjoyed the moment. Like, he was always focused on the next game, next thing, next task, and he still is that way. But the idea of like this one did mean a little something based on kind of how the last 9 months has unfolded, and just how, like, breaking their will, like you saw it on Illinois sidelines. He wasn't just talking. That wasn't his bravado. He was literally describing what had happened.
Yeah, I mean, if I can do one more like bigger picture thing that I think is part of what I'm going to try and capture my insight, and then we can talk about the game.
Spoiler alert.
It is that
Don't
like,
listen if you want to read.
there was an extent to which last year, fair or not, it felt like Indiana got to a place where it was riding the crest of a wave, where you sort of had week after week. Here comes Indiana, confident, unstoppable. They just, they have so much self-belief. What a story this isn't. Sometimes you can almost just get swept up in narrative. Like, I think that is part of why people like college sports, is because they are still very young adults, and it is sometimes possible for things to just be carried away by the narrative. And certainly Indiana fans have seen that in the opposite direction. I think about that 2-10 2021 season, for example, where there's so much hope and there's so much hype. And once it starts going wrong, there is just no way to stop, no way to arrest the negative momentum. Last year felt a little bit like the opposite of that. That, like, once Indiana really started sailing, it was just like, other than that Ohio State game, and then obviously Notre Dame, but end of season games are their own thing. It just sort of felt like, well, no one can. This boulder is rolling too fast down the hill now. This was not that. Like, we had this game circled, we being the Big Ten, for months, and we knew that non-conference season was just preamble to this game for Indiana. There
was preseason.
There was all kind of buildup. There was all kind of, like, we had months to talk about this game, to sort of highlight all the, is Illinois this year's Indiana, which I'm guessing they're not at this point. This was Indiana needing to, I think, act like a big boy program, and I would say they did. I would say they did.
Yeah, I mean, we could get into the game a little bit, how it unfolded now, but I mean, Signetti just, like you said, he saw something. They saw things on film. They felt confident going into the week. I don't know if you would have predicted this kind of beatdown, but they felt good. And I mean, I said in just my analysis, quick piece, that Illinois was outclassed in all three phases, and like, I mean, it was
honestly the only shame is that Indiana dropped those 2 pick sixes.
Right, like,
because then Indiana could claim they scored a touchdown in every phase. Because that is essentially the.
I mean, they had as many drop pick sixes as they had incompletion.
Someone in the press box said, and I didn't get a chance to check this, Mendoza was 21 of 23 for 267 and 5 scores. They said he did not throw an incompletion on a scoring drive.
I mean,
that his only 2 incompletions were on drives where they punted.
And he was really critical of those 2 incompletions. He was really upset.
Yeah.
He was down on himself. I mean, obviously it made a difference. But in terms of the game itself, I mean, where do you want to start? I mean, I think you have to start, even without Fernando Mendoza. I think if you had Alberto Mendoza in the game for that entire thing, I think they would have won this based on how the defense played.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you had fictional West Wing universe Supreme Court Justice Roberto Mendoza at quarterback, like, it was, we talked about this in the pregame buildup, whatever. I know we talked about it on the podcast. Illinois was third to last in the conference coming into this game in tackles for loss allowed. They were last in sacks allowed. Signetti said post game. Somebody asked him about the pass rush. He said, "Watch the Duke game. They were in their face all the time."
Yeah.
And I mean, there were, but by the second half, Illinois wasn't even running like two read stuff. Everything was drop set for us because they knew they could not block. And I think this was like it's hard to be critical of a defensive line when they had 30 tackles for loss in the two games previous to this one, but you did feel like that pass rush was a little bit slow developing compared to where it got to last year. And they played some weird opponents, and and they were doing some different things. But like still, you sort of looked at that group and you said, are they going to have the impact that they did a year ago? Tonight, Mikhail Kamara, like I'm just going to move it over here so we can look at the who 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different players have at least half a sack. 2 players have 2 sacks. I think it's telling that both of those players are defensive tackles. Like they were winning inside. They were winning in the spot.
Well, but here's a couple of things I would say, because I think the drive that where everything ended for Illinois was when they were backed up to their 1 yard line or 2 yard line, and the only thing they could do to prevent from getting a safety is hold everybody at the defensive front. But they were also and I saw people kind of tweeting like, oh, people are questioning our defensive line. Like, let's talk about Brian Haynes. Because like what he's doing, he's mixing up his personnel. They're running a lot of, especially in the first half. They got away from it in the second half because it didn't matter. but like running a lot of 3 linebacker stuff, going from 4-3 to 3-4 to 3-3-5, like mixing it up. Like they had no idea where the pressure was coming from. They couldn't block the interior guys to begin with. Like it wasn't just the defensive line showed up. Like scheming, man. Like they were outclassed. Like their offensive line was seeing go. Like I mean that's when they were backed up to the line, all they could do was try, and like they got a personal foul. Like they were just so overwhelmed in that moment, and that's when I was just like, this is done. This is done with. But I mean, just really impressive, and I mean, you do have to give credit to the front four, both groupings really. I mean, the backups. I mean, Mario Landino had another big game, 2 career high 2.
Well, I was just gonna what I was gonna point out for you so rudely cut me off was that the 2 guys with 2 sacks are both tackles. Like that's not where you're supposed to be getting sacks. That's where double teams go.
Yeah.
Like that's and the idea that Indiana was winning so comprehensively at the point of attack. I mean, it's just like it was just.
But my point was like I think the guards were looking to the right and left to figure out where the blitzers were coming from. The tackles were becoming more of a problem, and some of them were winning one-on-ones. But I'm saying like they had no idea where people were coming from, and it showed by the fact that like everybody was getting through. I mean, it was they had the one bust, and that's really the only negative thing you could say about the defense the entire day.
Yeah, and I mean, and listen, if you want to nitpick, like that's still like the one big question is sort of secondary organization and communication, and now the Lewis Moore thing comes up again next week. But Indiana's not going to worry about that tonight. I mean, another explosive day for the run game. That's 300 plus yards in all 4 games this season. Only the 2 penalties. I know Signetti will harp on the penalties because they're pre-snap. They're structural penalties. He'll say linemen should, but like they're not committing really damaging penalties. They're not turning the ball over. It's another game where they don't turn the ball over. I mean, they just.
I don't know when the last time they've gone. What was now? It's 4 in a row for 300 plus. I think it was that same year. Was it? I mean, 1987. Maybe it was like one time in the last 3 decades they've done it 4 times in a row, 300 yards in 4 straight games. That's impressive. And Kobe Martin, who, as we mentioned kind of earlier, is your leading rusher because he just played the 4th quarter and had 100 yards.
Yeah.
They were giving carries to Solomon Van Horst. I mean, obviously all 3 quarterbacks played. I'm just kind of incredible. I will say Mendoza. Really strong day, but the chemistry, I think what it was interesting to me now is Surratt and Cooper are starting to look like your 1 and 2 receiver. Like they spread the ball around last year all throughout the year, and Surratt wasn't like sort of the main guy all the time, and they didn't really have a number 2. It was like all different guys every week. I mean, these guys emerged, and Cooper, what I wrote about in my preview, had not played very well against Power 4 opponents. 40% of his career production came against FCS opponents coming in tonight. He had never had a game like this against a Power 5 opponent. He proved something, I think, to others. I mean, that he carried 4 guys on his back and almost scored a touchdown in the one play. Somehow caught that ball in the targeting call, which is one of the more impressive catches I've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, just really impressive. Not gaudy numbers, but 6 catches, 70 yards, a touchdown. Like, that's the kind of production next to Surratt that's going to make this team just impossible to handle for a secondary.
I don't really have anything else to say about this game. I mean, I do think it's important to talk about next week, only because Kinnick Stadium is the place that sneaks up on people. Like the most I think the most relevant example that I can think of in like my living memory on this beat, not about Indiana specifically, but is, was it 2016, 2017, somewhere in there, Urban Meyer's Ohio State. I think they won a game at Penn State where they had to come back in the second half. It was really dramatic. They won really late, and it was just like, this crowning moment, huge win. And then they went into Iowa City and they got absolutely buried. They lost like 56-23. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, because I think one of the most fundamental things that it seems like Signetti believes this team is proving to him, and then by extension everyone else, is its ability to just every day is the same. There's no focus on anything but here and now, and we're not worried about that, and we're not, and like there was already a lot of, from at least the players I talked to, there was already a lot of like, but Iowa's going to be tough too. We're moving on to Iowa, whatever. Indiana should win that game. Indiana will be favored in that game. Anyone who picks that game will pick Indiana. That stadium does have some form for tripping you up if you're not ready.
Yeah, I think it helps that it's not a night game though.
Yeah.
That will make a difference in terms of the atmosphere and sort of all that. But it's hard to imagine them overlooking a game just based on how they've kind of been focused on each moment, kind of
Right.
going back the last year and a half. For a few minutes, if you want, I'm sorry, late, but if you have any questions, we got a lot of people watching. Any questions in the comments? I mean, a lot of people cheering on the team. But if you have any questions, we could do another minute because like I said, there's not a lot to discuss in terms of like how this unfolded. I mean, it was just a one-sided. I wrote it was their least average yards per play for Illinois since 2021. It was just a complete massacre.
I mean, to come back to the Bielema quote where he said, like, I'm at a loss, like I've never been a part of something like this. Again, I think last year you would have gotten coach, especially second half of the season, that would have looked at Indiana and just said, like, man, Indiana's a wagon, and we're just gonna get rolled underneath them. Right. And we just gotta, we gotta deal with that. Like you think about like Jonathan Smith, for example, or I mean, even somebody like Jed Fish might have felt that way a little bit, even knowing that they weren't going to, he wasn't facing Curtis Rourke. I mean, if you could have gotten Brett Bielema in an honest moment, I don't know what he tells you pregame he thinks this game's going to be, but I don't think he thought that his team was
all the scenarios
so comprehensively
right.
far behind, that the gap was this wide.
Well, one question I have for you. So we talked a little bit during the week about historical perspective, and where this game ranks and things like that. But is this the most surprising outcome to a game you've covered?
I think the only reason that I wouldn't say it's surprising is simply because there were games that surprised me more last year because I'd never seen Indiana do that. I knew Indiana, like Nebraska last year, maybe surprises me a little bit more simply because
unprecedented.
Yeah, like it felt like, well, I didn't know Indiana could beat. But
it's but you've talked about this.
No, I get it, but it's more the idea that like Indiana, like because of last year, Indiana has form for
right.
If you show that kind of weakness, then they will shred you. They won't. Somebody in the comments did say, "Did we even throw the ball in the second half?" And the answer is not a ton, because Indiana.
You didn't throw it in the fourth quarter at all because all the backups were in. So they didn't throw. I don't know when the last throw was though.
But I mean, I want to say Mendoza was like 17 of 19 at halftime. So I don't think he attempted more than maybe 4 or 5 passes in the second half.
His last pass came with 2:43 left in the third quarter.
Okay. It wasn't like Indiana was out there intentionally running it up. I mean, Signetti put his backup quarterback. I mean, at one point he was playing his third string quarterback. But this is because of last season, we know that Curt Cignetti coach teams will do this to you. If you roll over and show your stomach, they will go for it.
Yeah, but I mean, to outclass a team that was in the top 10 this badly, I mean, I just think it's another level, right? Even,
Yeah.
I mean, Nebraska didn't have this kind of experience last year. It didn't
Well,
have
but
this kind of
as you
quarterback last
said,
year.
we know. I mean, you know what's going to happen tomorrow is that
They'll just comment.
the
Yeah.
narrative is going to be that
One
Illinois.
question, Mark asked, what is Coach Sig doing differently? His winning percentage shows he's doing something. It's a good question. I think if anybody had the answer, they would know. But I think it looks
USA Today
looked at
had a
that.
story
Did
about
they?
that
I
this week.
didn't see that. It didn't go in the print, so I didn't.
It wasn't about Mikael Kamara, so you might have missed it.
I don't know about that. No, but I mean, I think some things that I think stand out to me. His longevity with his assistants right now, the trust he puts into him, kind of how the back and forth and kind of the setup he's kind of has in his organization. I think what's funny is I used to cover Virginia Tech, and they're talking about modernizing the football department, and going to a GM, and doing all these trendy things. And Signetti's like, "What do you need all that stuff for?
Mhm.
Like, I'm the guy. I'm the coach." And it's a very interesting sort of throwback approach. But he's also very good at delegating to his assistants in a way that I think feeds their success. And look, I said this going back now for a year and a half. The talent evaluation, what he's done in the portal, I think has to be at the top of the list. And there's no secret to that. That's his sort of secret sauce. But I think his talent evaluation is a step above based on the last 2 years. Maybe we'll need more data to see how kind of when we get away from those JMU guys, especially. But I think that to me is like has to be at the top of the list. They've six. I mean, Riley Milkowski today.
I think if
Roman Hendry.
yeah,
Look at all these transfers.
I think if you're talking like structure and X's and O's, I think the ability he's shown consistently to know how to put quarterbacks in positions to succeed is a really big piece of it, because that is obviously the most important position on the field. Is exceptionally difficult in college, and it's exceptionally difficult at a time when rosters are fluctuating, pieces move in and out. You aren't able to build quality depth at the same level that you were 10 years ago, because the guys that would have been your depth pieces will go somewhere else
a tad quarterback away from getting fired
to
now.
play. Yeah, I mean, you've got like you literally have head coaches making coordinator hires just trying to pick up and essentially just install offenses.
Yeah.
And bring quarterbacks, wide receivers, et cetera, with them. I think if you're talking about X's and O's, that's a really big piece of it for me, is that he's able to take each quarterback that he has on his own merits and say, I have my system and what I want to do, but within that, I am able to be flexible and creative enough to make sure that this guy has what he needs, and this guy has, like, it was striking to me, and I won't get too much off this tangent because I want to add something intangible that was in that story I wrote about Signetti this week. It was striking to me, for example, that when he left James Madison, there was never any noise about Jordan McLeod coming with him. Jordan McLeod was Sun Belt Player of the Year. If Indiana had signed the Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year at quarterback under any head coach, you would have said,
right,
that's a really big pickup for Indiana. There was never any noise about McLeod coming with them. It was like Signetti was able to say, no, at Indiana, I will need something different. I will need something, maybe is it better overall? I don't know, but it's better at this or it's better at this. I'll need something different. And I think that underpins, in terms of X's and O's, a lot of his success. Something else, and this did make this story. I talked to Paul Tortorella, who is, I think that, yeah, I called him John Tortorella all week because of the hockey coach, but it's Paul Tortorella. He's the head coach at IUP. He was Signetti's defensive coordinator, and he took over when Signetti left. And he was talking about, I was asking him this. I was saying, like, every coach talks about doing these things. What about his process works? Why is he different? And he said to me, he doesn't worry much about stuff that doesn't have to do with winning. And he said there are a lot of coaches that will try to micromanage, that will fill up their plate every day with stuff that is window dressing or is just for show. I mean, and I'm paraphrasing here. He didn't say this quite as wordy as I am, but there are coaches out there that will try to do too much, whether it's because they can't let go and delegate, or it's because they want to be seen doing these things, or whatever. He said he just does not worry much about stuff that doesn't have to do with winning. And I think that you see that transmitted to his players. I think his players take that throughout the offseason. Whenever I talk to people around the program, the phrase I heard more than anything else was businesslike. And I think you see that from a head
To
coach.
me, like, business like is what everybody tries to do, but
I get it. I get that,
I get
but
what you're saying, but
yeah.
like some of that I think is, but I guess again that if you can have a percentage of hit rate on these transfers, like this is like, I mean, just astounding because the level of what they've signed. Like, I mean, you're talking about 90%, like of guys that have worked out and kind of had roles. Like, I just think, and when he goes back to his film study and like his habits and how much film he watches.
It also goes back to though, I don't want to go too long. We're already past 25 minutes, and it's very late. We got a lot of work to do. It's not just about scouting though. It's also about creating the right environment. Like so in soccer, there was a study done, a bunch of like Liverpool sort of backroom came up with this list of reasons why a transfer fails.
Mhm.
And like the hit rate in the soccer transfer is about 50-50, give or take. And Liverpool had a run of like 5 or 6 years where their hit rate was like 95.5.
Yeah.
And their point was every time we looked at a player, yes, we were looking at the attributes and the skills and what the numbers were telling us, but we were also looking at this list of reasons that we sort of honed in on about why transfers fail and say like can we eliminate these?
Yeah.
And if we can't, then maybe we set that player aside. Whatever the numbers say, if we can't eliminate these sort of uncontrollable factors, then we set that player aside. I think there is also that piece of it for him on the back end, which is again,
But all
and you see
things
this with
yeah.
it's yes, the ability to scout and to identify and things, but I think even more than that, it's the ability once he gets a hold of a player to recognize how to get the best out of that player, what that means in terms of how he challenges them, what that means in
Yeah.
terms of how he uses them in his system. I just think that that's there are just coaches who see that better than others. I think this is one reason why Indiana is getting paid off for hiring a 63-year-old head coach when a lot of people wouldn't have done that. A lot of people would not have, in this sort of like NIL era and everything, a lot of people have said no.
Yeah.
You got to go younger, you got to go energy, you got to go enthusiasm. And Indiana said, we want someone experienced. We want someone who has a long track record of running their own program and knowing how it's done and knowing what the winning process looks like.
Well,
That's what they're getting.
Let's end on this. This it doesn't reset the season, but now we're past sort of this first block. What's the ceiling of this? Does this change? Does today change where? Like, so what? We had 10. I think we each had 10-2.
We each had 10-2. I think we had the same loss.
And I think we had him winning. I had him winning a playoff game.
I think I did too.
And so, does this reframe any of that? And what are your sort of expectations? Like, obviously, Oregon's in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean,
does this what does this do to that?
I still lean 10-2 purely because Oregon and Penn State are very difficult places to go. Like it's hard to.
One of those was at home. Would you be like?
Yeah, I think so. But I am starting to believe that on a night like this makes you believe on the balance of probability they'll still find a way to win one of those. One of Oregon or Penn State. And I'm like I said, I still stick to 10-2, and that's more out of respect for what those programs are, what those atmospheres are. What I will say is let's live in a world where they do what they should against Iowa next week and they don't get upset along the way, like the rest of the way home, and they go 10-2. I think this is the kind of game that allows them a different level of even if it is what we think it is. They go 10-2, they lose to Penn State, they lose to Oregon. Maybe they even lose one of those by a couple scores. Maybe even one of those takes on the complexion of like the Notre Dame game a year ago. I think a game like this gives them ammunition in the selection room to say.
Speak to that.
It's true. We'll talk. Let's talk about that on the podcast.
Yeah,
because I want to get. But you know what I'm saying. I think a game like this says.
No, absolutely. It reframes those discussions online. I just was curious about this raises what you think their ceiling is. Like if this now looks.
I think I do.
Like in your mind,
yes.
Like
because here's the other part of this. Do you want to get this team on a neutral field in January? Because I don't.
Right.
Like, do you
want to get them at home now?
Do you or do you want to get maybe they host a game then like do you want to get them in Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta? Weather's not a factor.
Yeah.
The maybe it's I don't know who they're playing, but assuming it's not like an SEC team, maybe the crowd's not a factor. Right. I think it's pretty clear Indiana fans are going to show up in that in that scenario. Like I would not want a Curt Cignetti coach team in a climate controlled environment. I mean, put it that way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just like
the greatest show on turf to 2.0.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I think it does. I think it's gonna. I think those are if they make it through Iowa, that Oregon game, and we got 2 weeks leading up to that game here with the bye week. Those will be interesting discussions to see how Indiana. We joked about people discounting this win now, but how that conversations are framed now because Oregon's been kind of a juggernaut, but like. Man, like this team now feels like
if Oregon
they're gonna be able
if
to-
Oregon had done this, we would
Yeah,
be
crown them,
we would be
yeah.
reframing
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
around Oregon.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I know, absolutely. So I just think it's an interesting discussion. One we'll probably keep having here as we go forward to the next couple weeks.
big one next weekend. I mean, I am serious about Kinnick. It sneaks up on people.
Todd still has PTSD.
But he says seeing Bielema on the side, broken on the sideline with Schadenfreude.
It was broken. You should look at if you hadn't seen those images. He's like, I think it was after the last Mendoza touchdown. He's on his knee, just like look, like he's gonna be sick. Like it was disgusting.
Schadenfreude is everyone's favorite kind of Freud. He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. This has been my Your Banners Postgame for Indiana 63, Illinois 10. We'll be back midweek, but between now and then, heraldtimesonline.com, indystar.com/sports for all of your postgame coverage. We will talk to you soon.